Welcome, everybody, to the Strive Summit podcast. I'm your host, Alex Hanna, and with me today I have Gary Cowan from Kane Group out in Ireland. I could be wrong on that. You can correct me. Gary, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, have me on. My name's Gary Cowan, and I'm the head of digital construction for Kane Group. And we are based in Northern Ireland, indeed in the island of Ireland. And we are Northern Ireland's premier M&E, MEP building services contractor. We are a design and build contractor, so we take on projects from probably in the UK here, it's REBA stages two right through to completion, and then we also have an FM aftercare part of the business as well that then would take over the building and do all of the FM aftercare for the building for its duration. And I've been in this role for about 10 years now with Kane's.
Awesome. So, what does Gary do when he's not?
When I'm not working, it's pretty much family time. You know, I am a father of five, married with five children, so very much family. It would take up all of my other time. But I'm kind of a real geek and a nerd, so you'll catch me lying in bed at nights watching YouTube videos about Revit and all the cool technologies. I'm a real technologist, sort of taking things apart and seeing how they work. So between running after the children, doing my own research and development on my own time, which really leads into my career then, that keeps me occupied pretty much all of the week. I coach a local football team here, a soccer team of youth, which my youngest son is a player in as well. So I do a bit of football coaching as well at the weekends with him, which is good crack. But just, a bit of socialising with all my circle of friends and trying to spend a bit of quality time. I'll take the five kids for us. Life for me at the moment. And it's great. Really enjoying it.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so you call yourself a technologist. What are some cool technologies you see when you're scrolling through YouTube or whatever, watching videos late at night? What are you seeing like up and coming? What have you been using lately? What have you want to use?
Well, I mean, for the last few years, started off as a standard BIM technician within Kane, but always had an eagerness and a hunger to do better, to figure out this cool technology of BIM, the possibilities of it, where would it go, how would it change construction years now. So whenever I started 20 years ago, it was very much, I was a draftsman at the start. I would have done a lot of 2D CADs, and the pace is unbelievable. In around 2016, 17, I started experimenting with virtual reality. No one in the industry really did virtual reality at that time, but it was YouTube that brought the two together. I'm a keen gamer. I got an Oculus Rift pretty much on launch day, and was playing games. And I was playing some cool games in VR, and being in that environment of virtual reality for anyone who hasn't done it is just totally immersive. But for me as a gamer, I'm running around shooting people, but then I'm looking at the building and I'm going, hold on, now look at all these pipes and these ducts, and like a light bulb went on above my head that if an artist can produce lifelike building services in a computer game, why couldn't I do that in my day-to-day life? So immediately went and started looking into the industry and seeing who was producing the software, and pretty quickly sort of put the feelers out to all of the developers of the kit, emailed the salespeople, rang the phones, asked to speak to people, got a lot of demonstrations of different VR softwares, and really just spent a good year understanding the technology, understanding how BIM can be converted. And in those days, it was quite a cumbersome process. It wasn't an easy button click as it is today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I sort of spent a lot of time working out the kinks, figuring out the workflows, and sort of introduced it within Kane's then in sort of early 2017. And it was revolutionary for us at the time. We are a prefabrication contractor. We have a very large production facility here in Northern Ireland at our head office, and everything that we design in Revit, in VR, and using the virtual VDC environment, we actually fabricate that in our factory out the back and then ship it across the RC to all of our sites that are in and around London, and basically put the sites together a big Lego kit. So it was kind of at that stage, the light bulb for me was that was how we would master and crack the prefabrication problem. We had been doing it till then with limited success. Quite a lot of the stuff that we had designed would have been done in AutoCAD MEP,
Hmm.
separate to the Revit model. And as soon as those two designs diverged, they never ever came back together properly again. So we were finding quite a lot of wasted material, wasted labour, wasted time, stuff coming to sites, and the whole room had changed, or there was extra cable tray, or there was something that had changed in the BIM model that the guys doing the prefab didn't quite pick up. So it sort of fell apart and didn't really work. And we were really trying to push ourselves and sell ourselves to our clients as having this
Right.
prefabrication workflow and the benefits of this. But in reality, it really wasn't a benefit, if you know what I mean, because a lot of the stuff was getting grinded apart and re-welded on site. So I started to really look at technology and how can we use these tools to get better. So VR was the first cool bit of kit that came in, and that let us slip a headset on and then walk straight into the model and look at the model from the inside out and be able to do all of our QA processes within the model rather than, as all of our standard Revit guys know, you're looking at a 2D screen from an elevated view of like a dollhouse, and it's very hard to see the entire picture from very limited 2D views. But as soon as you put that headset on and you walk onto the site, for anyone who's had any site experience, I spent probably 10, 12 years on the sites before I became a BIM technician. So it was familiar to me, and it was very familiar for a lot of the senior guys in our business who weren't tech guys, they're not BIM guys.
Yep.
You know, they struggle using a phone kind of thing,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
these guys have came from the sites, came from the tools. So as soon as I slipped the headset onto them, it was like they had walked back onto the site again and they were away. So it freed up our BIM guys that they didn't have to sit with a design manager on their side to
Yeah.
take 2 hours to review a design. They just punch it out to the VR system, and we have a dedicated VR room in the head office where there's a high spec computer and a tethered headset where anyone can go in and slip the headset on. And that was kind of the initial of it. So as the technology has moved on over the last 5 or 6 years, it's all standalone devices now. So we have a VR headset pretty much on nearly every site. And that allows the guys, the boots on the ground, the guys and the girls that are actually building the building to go and put the headset on and almost dress rehearse the sequencing and the
Hmm.
logistics and health and safety. We're looking into all different aspects of the VR now, health and safety training, recital of high risk activity. So if we're doing a big lift or we're doing something, we're actually talking to a few different companies about trying to engineer some sort of training program of what happens if it fails. We all know what we're supposed to do, but imagine being able to run a simulation where the chains break or someone gets hurt. You can have an NPC hurt, and then you can gauge everyone's reaction. What do you do? And the VR environment is such a good immersive tool. You pick up. I think the statistic I read was something like 20 times faster. You pick up information
It
and you pick up things.
yeah.
So
It's
it's fantastic.
it's kind of crazy how you guys have your own VR dedicated setup to see that. I think like what VR brought to the construction world was basically perspective, right? So I think about it like this: every time someone gets into BIM or they're doing MEP, you immediately go and when you go to a restaurant or a bar or something, you look at the exposed ceiling, you start looking at all the pipes and duct, and everyone
That's
does it.
me.
And
Yeah.
if you don't,
Oh yeah.
like, you're probably doing it wrong. But what VR did was made that perspective available to everybody. So
Yeah.
what your contractor does on site, he sees that stuff. He doesn't see it from a floor plan or any of that stuff. He sees it built. Getting that contractor to be like, yeah, here's all the exposed pipe that we designed in the building. And then they go through and like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. We don't build it like that. You're going to have to do this, 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 this. That time saving before it even gets to prefab is massive. So I
Yeah.
love how you guys like gambled on VR and it's actually paying off quite well for you.
Big time.
From
It opened up a complete different avenue for us. The first thing that struck me the very first time I put the VR headset on in one of our Kane models, I was always very sort of confident in our modeling at that stage in 2016, 2017. I really
yep.
thought that our models were so dense and there was so much information in them. But as soon as I slipped the headset on, I entered onto the first site. Uh, all I seen was how empty it was. Would you believe? There was a model that had something like 40,000 elements in it, and at that stage, the computers were kind of struggling to see it. And whenever I walked onto the VR, I was thought to myself, half the stuff's missing. There was no steel work, there was no goalpost hangers, no uni strut, no fasteners, no clips. So I thought to myself, how can we expect the guys on site to be able to put this together quickly and efficiently if we are expecting the guys on site to spend the first 4 or 5 days of the project just looking at 2D drawings and trying to figure out how are we going to hang this? And then quite a lot of the times it all changed because the guys that were coordinating didn't give enough consideration to the spacing of clips or insulation or phenolic blocks or any of the setup of the hanging fixtures. So we kind of rolled back and said, right, for this system to work correctly, we need to bring our Revit modeling from here all the way up to the top. So that's when
100%.
I kind of rolled back a wee bit and said, right, looked out into the industry and looked at all the websites like BIM Object and all the repositories for BIM data, and there wasn't anything there at that
Mm-hmm.
stage. So I then went down to the fab shop and said, right, show me all our common items, show me all your half lap clips, show me uni struts, and I actually sat with a pair of vernier calipers and measured everything to millimeter accuracy and created parametric models of all the ancillary pieces that we would consider that would never have been in the model before. And by putting that level of detail into the model, it kind of gave the VR validity.
Yep.
Before there was that level of detail in the model, it was very cartoonish. It wasn't the full picture. And what that did was really enhanced our prefabrication workflow then because everything was being accounted for and taken for. There was no guessing games on site.
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago, draftsmen and women would have drew 2D plans, and the knowledge and the experience was on the site. It was the site personnel that really had the 20, 30 years experience of building buildings from back of the cigarette packet sketches and 2D plans. But that has totally changed now in today's uh, industry. For the efficiencies and the material wastage and concerns that we have in today's construction sites versus 20, 30 years ago, the focus has to be on the BIM model becomes the most
Yep.
important aspect of the building. We always say that we build the building twice. We build it in virtual reality first, right down to the every
Yep.
screw, nut and bolt. But it opened up so many other workflows for us as well because digital quantification appeared out of that because we didn't used to draw the whole building. So now that we draw it all, we can now digitally quantify it at a click of a button.
You could put
Things like
cost, you
that.
could put
Yeah,
calculations, you could oh, there's so much stuff. I think
so
like
much.
from 2015 to 2018 was the discovery period for this 3D modeling.
It really
Revit was
was.
still, fairly not used as much, just starting to gain some momentum. There wasn't BIM content out there. People are starting making their own. If anyone notices they download BIM content from any like the major sites, it's usually upgrading from 2015, or
It is,
before.
yeah.
And then like 2018 to like where we're at now was like, okay, we're getting 3D models. There's more and more people getting into this. I'll call it 3D modeling, but Revit usage, SketchUp usage, that kind of stuff. And like you said, if you're fabricating anything, if you're gonna get down to a gnat's ass detail, you gotta fabricate everything. You can't skip something, right? I could put hangers in there all day, but if I don't put embeds or I don't put nuts and bolts, I just give you points. I put all that stuff in there
Yeah,
just to give you points and heights of hangers. Now, if you
yeah.
want takeoffs and stuff of hangers, you can then probably quantify that with a parameter of some kind. But in reality, you're making these models as accurate as possible because it's going to get seen as built before it actually gets built, which I think is an incredible workflow. I have to say that if anyone's going to build anything, everyone, no matter engineer, architect, has to build to that level.
Without
There's a money thing involved with that, but if you imagine like if engineers were to build to that level, and like then a manufacturer gets the project and you guys just have to tweak a few things, like yeah, give that money to the engineers. We'll build it, we'll draw it up, we'll
yeah.
give fabrication stuff, right? Your cost to build has gone way down. Your cost for drawings may have gone up a little bit, but like that quality coming out, you could build so much faster. I praise you
Oh,
for your
without it.
workflow.
Thank you. Yeah,
uh,
I mean, it all came around. We were involved in a fantastic project back in 2017, which was the Claridge's Hotel.
Hmm.
It was known as the Iceberg Basement, located right in the heart of London city centre, expansive areas of London. It's completely surrounded by buildings all around it, and the hotel was. There's been a hotel on that site from around about the 1800s. It's a very, very old building. And in the 1920s, they constructed a more modern wing on the right hand side of it, which is known as the Art Deco wing. But fast forward to, late 2015, 2016, the hotel was actually starting to show its age a wee bit. It didn't have all the facilities and amenities of a spa or a pool,
Hmm.
but it had always been sort of the go-to hotel for anybody that was coming to London. For example, any visiting presidents from the States or any dignitaries, rock stars, film stars. This was a very elite hotel. So they said to themselves, right, we're going to have to try and bring this hotel. There was no area around to expand sideways, so they could only go up or down. And the problem,
Hmm.
so the only way to do it traditionally was to close the hotel, dismantle the MEP, take it away, build the two floors, and then reinstate the MEP. So the hotel would have been probably closed for 2 or 3 years during all of that works, and the client, the Mayborn Group, just flatly said no. Will there be far too big of an impact on the business?
Hmm.
Lose far too many of the high super VIP clientele. So they sort of reached out to a lot of the companies here in the UK, and Arup, I think, were the structural engineers that were on board, and they started looking at this really radical plan to actually dig below the hotel and construct a 6-story concrete substructure below the hotel while the hotel remained open and trading with everybody in the hotel living their lives, going about their business, but there was an army of guys below their feet, and they actually dug. I can't even remember how much. The basement is 100 meters long, which is about 350 feet. It's 20 meters wide, which is about 60, 70 feet, and it's 6 stories deep, which is about 65
Holy
meters.
cow.
And that was all extracted from a singular hole in the existing concrete slab. And it was an amazing project. There's documentaries on the BBC that you can actually see how they constructed
Hmm.
this building. So it was phenomenal, and they had actually constructed the entire basement and finished it when we were approached then to consider the MEP installation. And everything had to fit down a hole in the basement slab that was about 15 feet by 15 feet.
Yeah.
We're, we're talking 10-inch diameter pipework that had to go down. There was 13,000 meters of pipework went into it, and we had to coordinate it all and prefabricate it all to come in and go together. Because it was underground and because there was only one ventilation shaft, there was no grinding or welding. Everything had to be manually fixed, and manual fixings like Victolic couplers and all. There was no welding on site, so it all had to be flanged, bolted connections, Victolic coupling. So that was just, to me, that was just the best project that I could have been involved in at that time, because it just really gave me the drive to look at all these technologies, and it happened so quickly at the time. So VR was the first thing that we brought in, because we knew we had to be able to take this thing apart and look
Right.
at it from every angle. It just could not be wrong. Uh, the next thing that we really worried about, that had caused us a lot of issues in the past, was building tolerance itself. So we all be given these beautiful square, perfect Revit models in
Oh yeah,
theory.
everything's straight in the real world. I don't know if you heard this or
Oh
not,
yeah.
but everything's
Oh,
straight. Yeah.
so the very first time that I went on the site and walked, it's hard to explain to anybody, but you're in the centre of London. It's huge, it's a huge city, and you go down in the back of this hotel and you go down a staircase and you look down into the hole, and it was a 60-foot drop down into the earth, and you're like, wow, like, I've never seen anything like it. And this first site visit, it became quite apparent that it wasn't square and it wasn't true. It was quite off in places. So
Hmm.
we were trying to design big lateral frames that carry layers upon layers of pipework. And there was also vertical frames on the walls where the pipework was banked vertically. But the problem was that the wall had a kink in it. So, if we had just assumed it was straight, we would have spent millions of pounds prefabricating all this stuff.
Right.
to come on site and go, uh-oh. So it was that stage that I started looking at reality capture and point cloud technology. I have a lot of friends who work for like Geosystems and Hexagon, so I reached out to a lot of my friends and said, right, what's a crack here? How do we make this work? So we commissioned a local company who were surveying because we're not surveyors, we're MEP guys, you
Right.
know. So we paid for a company to come in and do a point cloud scan, and we scanned the entire basement as a substructure. And they delivered us a point cloud then of the substructure. It had 300 million points and it was 13 gigabytes in size, which I thought at the time was big
Yeah.
compared to what we
I
have
mean, I
now,
mean,
but
it
at the
is
time I
big,
was
but
blown
yeah.
away. Yeah, it was, but what it did, it gave us complete certainty of a digital representation of
Hmm.
the building so that all of our design guys and our technicians in Northern Ireland could work without having to see the physical site. So we took the structural model out and we brought the point cloud in its place. And we actually paid for scan the bin to happen. So
Yeah.
we commissioned a really highly detailed structural model to be converted from the point cloud, which showed us all of the columns that were slanted, showed us all the even the ripples in the floor and everything. So that removed building tolerance completely, and we were able to hang our hat on that and say, yes, there's not going to be any surprises. You know, there's the amount of times that we've walked on the site and there's been a downstand beam or there's been a column appeared, and you're like, what the hell did that come from? It's not in the model, but that's a fall down because you have a structural consultant who does the model, but then it's a general contractor that erects it, and 9 times out
Right.
of 10 they make changes and it never gets back. So you can never be confident of a BIM model. So that's where I learned very quickly that once you have a structure to look at in the real world, it's time to reality capture. It's time to get rid of the building tolerance completely. So that's how we eradicated building tolerance
Yeah.
from our
I mean,
product.
I think what I'm most interested in is if there was this 15-foot round hole, how did you get personnel down there?
Oh, there was another shaft that had a scaffold and staircase down, but it was
Oh,
only a smaller shaft. The big shaft was the hoist. It was where the hoist went up and down, and it wasn't just us using that hole. The main contractor who was building all the walls and stuff,
yeah, yeah.
he was using that too. So scheduling and logistics was a real nightmare on that site. There was no site storage. There was no. Um, you had to really book everything in the advance. So
Right.
that's where the BIM shone for us. It let us look at the scheduling, it let us look at logistics, let us plan all of the complex pieces, what had to go
Right.
in first, what order it went in. We were able to dry run or as well. We were able to animate it in Unreal Engine and look at all the stuff moving and shifting about, and that was so cool.
Yeah. I
And
think
then
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I think what's happening is you've used this technology and learning throughout that like you brought VR in, then you're like, hey man, we got to see in this dark hole. We have no idea what we're doing. Throw a scanner down there. I mean, it's awesome that you're bringing this technology in at the very beginning. Like you're I mean, here in the US, people are still adopting technology and adopting laser scanning and it's expensive for these scanners. But I think what's happening is what is the cost to not have a scanner? Can you measure that? Right? You can't measure that because you don't know what the scanner can do for you. And then all of a sudden you get a scanner and your cost goes down, even though you bought this $100,000 scanner. You now have exact reality captured in your model, and you're not guessing what is the bow in the wall and the waves in the floor. I think that's fantastic. So,
Yeah, I mean,
Gary,
for us, there's always a flight involved for us because there's a sea in between
yep,
our work site, so we can't just jump in a truck and drive to site. If anyone had to go and verify anything, it was a plane flight and a hotel, and so
mm-hmm,
very quickly, as you say, over 5, 10 jobs a year, over the amount of time that one of those machines, 5, 10 year lifespan, it pays for itself within the first
yeah,
couple of jobs. It really does. It's
I think it's
phenomenal
incredible.
technology.
So, Gary, I want to hear about your story. Obviously, you're very into tech. I can hear the excitement in the voice when you talk about it. And I find that very exciting. I love people who are passionate about bringing that in there. When did that start? Let's go back to your little kid seeing construction, or you're in university or whatever, and then I want to hear your story how you got to the point where you're at now, running the technology department at Kane.
Well, I suppose my curiosity and my love of technology probably goes all the way back to childhood. I'm one of three boys. I have two older brothers. I'm the youngest of my three boys in the family. My dad isn't an engineer. My father works in logistics. Did work in logistics. He's retired now, but he was a very handy man. If there was anything I ever needed done in the house, he had us all from a very young age, fixing stuff in the house and building things. I was always
Hmm.
very good with my hands when I was a kid, but I always had this overarching curiosity of how things work. And I used to always take them in our house whenever I was a kid. That I used to go out to my dad's tool shed and lift his screwdrivers in. And I remember taking the TV apart one day in the living room and had the TV in 100 pieces. And my dad walked in and near flipped. And every Christmas, when I got my presents from Santa, I was straight out and had them took apart. And the amount of beatings I got from my dad, a couple of slaps for taking very expensive things apart. But I always managed to get them back together again. But I always needed to know how it worked on the inside, and that has stayed with me all my life. Even now when I'm using these fantastic tools, I don't just take these tools at face value. I reverse engineer them. I get in touch with the developers and try and help them. It's like with the XR system and the VR. I've reached out to Autodesk straight away and I work with them now. I'm a beta tester on the Workshop XR, and I'm dealing with like all the big technology players. I have a contact in everyone because I'm just happy to take them at face value.
Hmm.
I'll critique it. I'll tell them where it goes wrong. Just to try and make it better for everyone. Probably very selfishly of me because I wanted to do what I wanted to do, but at the same time, if they don't do that for me, I will go and reverse engineer it and make it work for us. And I've reverse engineered quite a lot of stuff in the round the Lego stuff. There's another
You haven't
precision
taken one
thing
apart,
that I
have you?
took, but no, thankfully not. $100,000 machine, I think
Yeah.
I would stop at that, yeah. But that was me in my childhood growing up and then going through school. I was always very good at art. I was very interested in art and technology and design was my
Hmm.
favorite subject at school. And I was very lucky to have a really great teacher in my high school and Grosvenor Grammar School, whose name was Mr. Cowan as well, no relation, but Mr. Ricky Cowan. He was a brilliant role model at the time. He was a very, very good teacher, really gave me a passion for designing and figuring things out. And then kind of made the decision towards the end of school that I was going to do engineering. So I went and studied at Queen's University of Belfast and did a mechanical and manufacturing engineering degree,
Hmm.
nothing to do with building services or BIM. But as part of that course, you have to do a year in industry. And I was very lucky to get a lot of my friends who were slightly older than me had done their year in industry, and it was in building services. And of course, I had not sorted out my sandwich year at all, and I got a phone call very close to the deadline from one of my friends saying, "I'm just finished here, and they're looking for somebody in. If you're interested." And me being lazy at the time, I was like, happy days. I didn't have to go and try and find a job, but that was building services design. So that's how I fell
Hmm.
into building services design. Spent a year out working in the industry and just fell in love with it. Just thought it was brilliant. Loved the whole aspect of it, and the coordination of it was a real thing for me. Every building's unique. No two things are the same, and you really have to use your head to figure out complex coordination. And there's a lot of rules that you have to follow with the different systems, with heating systems and drainage, slope pipes. It's not just as simple. I used to love puzzles and stuff when I was a kid, so it just was a natural progression for me to be able to pay to do that as a job. So when I graduated from Queen's in 2006, which is actually hard to believe, it's been that long ago, and basically just went straight into the industry as a CAD technician when I first started. The first job that I walked in and they had been paying an outside company to do design, and they were getting me to just rebadge CADs, and I lifted one of the tender folders from the manager's desk on a Friday and took it home over the weekend and did all of the calculations and worked out all the pipe size and duct sizing and did all the drawings and come back in on the Monday and set the folder on the boss's desk, and he looked at it and was like, what is this? And I was like, oh, that's that job. And he said, hold on a minute, kid. And he went out and he came back with the contract and put it in front of me and got me to sign it. And that was my first job from university then. And I did that for about 6 months, doing just 2D drafting. And then one of the, it was quite a small firm in Belfast that I worked for at the time called Red Sky. And the manager who I worked for at the time just got up and walked out one day, just left, had enough, and threw the head up and walked out. And the senior business manager, Stephen Boyce, who I worked for at the time, gave me the opportunity then to jump into management. And he said, look, kid, do you want to go on site for a while and learn the ropes and find your feet? And I was like, yeah. And at that stage, I had dreams of being a consultant, a design consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, I'm never going to be a consultant with just theoretical knowledge. I didn't have a good appreciation of how it actually worked on site. So my thinking at the time was, right, I'll go and spend a couple of years on sites, really build up my knowledge, and then when I become a consultant, at least I'll know what I'm trying to design. So probably for, I think it was almost 10 years I spent first as a site engineer and then a site project manager and then a contracts manager, kind of slowly working my way up the ladder with different responsibilities. So I've got a real good feel of real world construction, and I think that is what's helped me so much when I made the switch across to BIM, because I inherently understand what it is that we're trying to design now. 20 years ago when I was doing 2D polylines, you didn't have to understand building services, you didn't have to understand different types of clips and hangers and radiuses of bends. You were just drawing dots and splines. You didn't really understand any of it. You just sort of threw it out there, and the site guys would have critiqued it a wee bit and told you to change it, but you didn't understand what you were
Mm-hmm.
drawing. But today, in today's BIM landscape, you almost need to have an NVQ or a qualification in ductwork or pipework. But it is very difficult. So I do sort of feel bad for a lot of kids that are coming through with the BIM now, because they're coming out of universities now and they know the theoretical side of BIM, but if I ask them to go and coordinate it's useless. So that's kind of why I'm a STEM ambassador now too. I kind of try and pay back into the schools to try and push them to change the curriculum. Here in the UK, the universities and the colleges are so far behind the industry, it's ridiculous.
I often talk about getting into the trades, right? If you want to do BIM, or like you want to get a secure job in 4 years out of high school, go find a trade, go do your trade, do 4 years, do 2 years, and then go to any contractor. And I think this might be like a global problem too. Go see any contractor and tell them you wanted to start designing their jobs, and they would give you a job, because trades are not diminishing in one place. It's everywhere. It's a generational thing. And right now we have a big gap in knowledge from like the guys on site that are like, oh, you don't want to buy those clips, you want to buy these clips. These are the clips that we use, right? For cutting wires or whatever. That is not taught in a book. That is taught by 20 years in the field using every type of snips you can find. And then now you have a new guy coming on. You're like, no, you want to buy these pair. I don't care what you bought from Home Depot. Buy these, they'll last you the next 20 years. That kind of generational knowledge. Now, that's a very, very unique thing, but that kind of generational knowledge is what's missing. And I think getting into the trades and then modeling gets you that extra leg up. Because, a lot of these people are getting old, they're going to want to retire. They're probably going to get into modeling rather than going on site and busting their back and knees. They'll probably be in the office. But no, I like that approach. Continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, no, you're right. I totally agree with you. That for us, that would be the best kind of person that would come in to do BIM for me. Someone who has spent, even a couple of years, 5, 10 years on
Mm-hmm.
sites, knows the pitfalls, knows the problems, knows just that it's instinct, as you said. That you can't teach that. You really can't. So, but that's not to say that we don't. We would take anyone in. We take kids from school straight out of GCSE at 16, but it's through desperation more than anything at the moment, because as you said, there's just the kids today who want to go and get dirty and try, walk the sites and stuff, which is fair enough. It's not for everyone, but you know, the industry is suffering because of it, and I think technology's both a blessing and a curse, because it's helped so much in the construction industry, but it's turned quite a lot of prospective people away because they're blinded by wanting to be pop stars or TikTok's the worst invention that has ever hit the world. I do believe I have three teenage kids at the minute, and it's just ruining their intelligence and ruining their want to do anything. So I try and limit that as much. But my oldest son, who's turning 19 this year, he's now decided to go and take on a trade. I've encouraged him not to go to university. Has told him he did his A
Mm-hmm.
levels. He has the ability to go to university, and for years to come, he wants to go and do that. The options are for him, but I kind of try and push him down the trade route. Go and do a trade for a couple of years, and then if you want, you can come and work for me. And a couple of years, don't think that you're going to get a free pass from me just because I'm your
Right.
dad. And I do it. I had to fight my way to here. So will you, son. So that's kind of my attitude even with my own children.
No, that's awesome. So I guess what would you say to like the students or kids out there that don't want to go to college? What would you can say to them to be like, hey, did you know this field exists called BIM?
Well, I do a lot of that with STEM and maths. But I do. I go around schools and I talk to the kids, and I even remember when I was at school, that was always the big push from the schools here in the UK. You have to go to university. And a lot of that, I think, is the schools just trying to make themselves look good. That they have so many kids going to university. I don't think it's in the kids' own best
Mm-hmm.
interests. And what I try to explain to the kids is that being book smart isn't the be all and end all. You can learn quite a lot more from life experiences and how you carry yourself and how your attitude towards work and your drive and your motivation is more important to me than a piece of paper with an A on it. That means nothing to me. And I suppose I'm
Yep.
hypocritical because I have a degree, but my degree isn't a 1-1 brilliant degree. I probably just barely scraped my degree in all honesty. But you know, my degree was just like a foot in the door for me to get into the industry and sort of get me a slight head start. But I found even with myself, it's how I've carried myself and it's how I've approached work and my own, drive and passion for the stuff that is what my success. But again, failure, don't be afraid to fail. I always tell all the kids that, all the kids are always sort of worried, what if I go and it doesn't work? And I always say
Mm-hmm.
to them, look, I'm 41 and I've only really been tasting success for the last 5 or 6 years. And before that, it was pretty much 15 years of failure and getting things wrong and being told I wasn't good enough and getting let go from jobs and not fulfilling contracts. Like there's so much more of the failure in my mountain of success than the tiny ice cap at the top, which is the cream at the top. So I always encourage the kids, don't be scared of going out and putting your heart and soul, get straight back up and get on the horse again. Just keep going.
Right. I always like to think of success as like climbing the tallest set of stairs you've ever climbed in your life. It is it is grueling all the way up, but when you get up there and you hear that, that was worth every step all the way up. And so, you know, failures maybe stair steps is what I like to call them because like, yeah, it burns. It sucks sometimes. Um, and sometimes you have to take a leap. You got to do some stuff. I think that's pretty profound stuff. So thank you. Um, last thing I want to talk about is this 10 Springs job that I just got news today. Why don't you kind of talk about what 10 Springs is and what that is for Kane Group?
Yeah, well, we've been lucky enough in the last few weeks to have been awarded a very prestigious job known as 10 Spring Gardens in London. The client is actually the Crown Estates, which is the estate of King Charles himself. So it's probably one of the most prestigious clients that we've had the pleasure of working for. So it's kind of a 1970s office block that's very close to Buckingham Palace. It's actually right at the very end of Pall Mall and just hang left and it's right on the corner. The building was built in the 70s, so it's very tired now. So it's a full sort of strip out and reconfigure again. So again, we're using all of the tools and the bells and whistles. So we went in and we've reality captured the entire building, surveyed it, and sort of seen how the structure is. But then we're now developing a new sort of building over the top of the original footprint and the original structure. Very, very exciting times we're working for. Good client that we have that we enjoy success with McLaren, based here in the UK. We've done a number of
Mm-hmm.
jobs with them over the years and do very good work with those guys. So yeah, it's very early doors for us at the moment. We're really, really deep in the coordination process here at the minute. The architect on board is ORMS, and they're a great bunch of guys too. And it is actually working really, really well at the moment. We're in the middle of the text detection process here, but the data part of this job is something that I've never really seen before. we have been very used to producing Kobe models for our clients over the last sort of 10 years. But the Crown Estates seem to want data on everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything, right down to any object that is inserted into the model requires metadata. Part of me is not wanting to go too heavy on the modeling, but it kind of goes totally against our ethos.
Right.
We're trying to diversify our work a wee bit at the moment. The last few years we really get into a sort of real good groove of doing a lot of residential stuff in London. But we're seeing the market changing so slightly. We're trying to diversify our way out and trying to get a
Hmm.
wee bit more industrial and commercial. So we're doing quite a lot of different projects at the minute. But the Spring Gardens one is very unique in its data requirement. On my last count, there's about 1.2 million cells of data required for the model
Wow.
for us to provide the client and verify as well. So it's a bit of a uphill battle for us, but it's again nothing that we won't attack with, you know, a bit of
Right.
vigor.
Well, the reason that I wanted you to kind of talk about that is when you're in the industry that we're in, which call it construction, call it digital construction, call it whatever you want. When you get into this industry of buildings, whether it's like buildings or modeling cars or whatever, the types of jobs that you get and you get to see are incredible. Like I had an opportunity to walk Top Golf, which is an entertainment set out here, before it was built. Right, I got to walk through it in VR. I got to be a part of that, and then next thing you know, I'm at an event at that place, and I was like, oh yeah, I know where everything is in this model. It's a sense of pride and joy when you have that. Now, after you guys finish this project or as it's ongoing, as you see Buckingham Palace and you see the buildings and stuff, you're like, oh yeah, no, I was standing there, doing that work, and I think that is something that you can't. I can't tell someone like that's why you want to do construction. They have to actually feel that. Like I worked in a modular factory and I got to see every box that was designed and put together into a package out to the shop come towards, the dock that we were at and then move over, and I got to see, like, I could walk those buildings and tell you where every stud and strap and tie down and plumbing and everything is. And
Yeah,
it's a sense of pride that you get. And I think that you guys specifically have, like, even the palace or the hotel in London, you're telling me, digging that big hole, and you got entry points that's a hole this big and a hole this big, and that's all you have, and all the coordination that goes with it. It's incredible to hear those kind of stories. And Gary, I want to appreciate you coming on today and sharing that with everybody. Um, do you have any last words you want to share with everyone before we head out?
I'll just encourage everyone to you know keep pushing forward. It's amazing watching the industry around me evolve and see so many people with the same passion that I have, and I would just encourage everyone, just don't lose that passion. It's very inspiring for me. Um, I was lucky enough to be invited over to the States there in November, where I attended Autodesk University, and I was absolutely blown away by the international people. I come from a very small part of the world. Northern Ireland is tiny compared to the rest of the world. So it was really inspiring for me to meet all these people from across the world. Kind of thought I was the only one for a while because I didn't really see it worldwide, but I've
Mm-hmm.
really met so many people from across the world, and that's kind of what inspires me. I always don't ever think that I'm somebody better than me, and I'm always looking to see. So I would just encourage everyone, please keep going because you are my inspiration.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Gary, for coming on. I appreciate your time. If you guys like listen what you were hearing, please like, follow, and subscribe to the Strive Summit podcast. Follow Strive on LinkedIn and all its other socials. Again, thanks, Gary, for coming on.
Thank you so much. Loved it.